All right. Well, Amy, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I'll tell you what, this is a dream come true. I'm totally fangirling right now because
Please.
of just the way you have completely transformed my life. So, super excited to share what I've learned and how Empower has really impacted me.
Oh, well, I love that so much. And I'm fangirling too, because here's the thing. Normally, when I'm having a conversation with someone who's gone through Empower, I have a different type of relationship with them because normally they've come through our traditional route of Empower, which has all of this hands on coaching. And you actually went through a beta test that we were doing of a self study version. So I actually didn't get to work with you in any sort of like close proximity. But what I did do is I saw from a bird's eye lens what you were doing, how you were impacting so many lives, how you were showing up on social media, and of course, the incredible launch that you were able to have. I guess using our framework, I'm assuming that's how it happened, right? So I'm really excited to chat with you today about a lot of different things. But why don't we kick off there? How did we even get connected?
It was a friend. This just goes to show the power of just being consistent and putting yourself on out there on social media. You never know who is watching. So I was having some trouble with launching. And a friend of mine was like, you know what? There's this girl that I always see her online. She's like, I love her energy. I think you would really like her. She's like, she's doing this free training. She gives massive value. She's like, just go see what it's all about. And so I did, and I loved it. I mean, even the free content that you put out, there is so much value in that. And I learned so much from the free training that when the opportunity came up to do the beta program, I was like, oh my gosh, this works for my life right now
Yeah.
because it was a chaotic season. So the traditional route just didn't fit with what I had going on. But
Yeah.
the self-study option, I'm like, you know what? Count me in. So yeah, that's how I ended up in your world.
It's so cool. And I love how you're talking about too, just being in a chaotic season, yet still investing in yourself, time and money, still taking a chance on yourself, going after the dream, that like burning little voice that you had inside. Cause I believe you started your online business during the pandemic, right? So not that long ago.
I sure
Okay.
did. Yeah. It's funny because it started out as one thing, and in growing that, it completely evolved into another thing. But now being able to look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing right now what I've done my entire career because I
Isn't
come
that
from a career in
funny?
physical therapy,
Yeah.
ironically enough, which you were in PT school.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got so much in common. And so I think that drew me to you too, was just being human and being authentic and sharing your journey. And I think that's so important as entrepreneurs that we do share our journeys because you never know what touch points are going to connect with someone, where it's
Yeah.
going to resonate.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're a mom and you have the Mompreneur podcast, and you now have a second grader and a fourth grader as of probably this week, right? Going back to school this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
So you're busy, you're in a different season, you're doing sports, you're doing clubs, you're doing all of these things. And I imagine, I mean, 3 years ago, they're still both in your life. At what point did you decide, I'm a mama too, I have a 9 to 5 job. This is a great idea for me to go after this crazy, stupid idea. Like, let me go build a business. How did you make that transition?
Yeah, so that was a very weird transition. And I really feel like the universe just had my back because I was a box checker. I went through life being the overachiever, like, okay, let's go to college, get the degree, get married, have kids, have the house, have the family, like everything on paper. I was checking all the successes or
Mhm.
the check boxes to success.
Yeah.
But whose definition of success was I meeting? And so everything shut down during the pandemic. And at the time, my kids were in kindergarten and preschool. And I'm
Were
like,
you working as a
oh
PT
no.
then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, my husband is working in healthcare, he's an essential worker. How are we going to make this work? Because there's no school, there's no daycare. Like, what now? So we did what you do, you figure it out.
Right.
And I was offered the opportunity to take a furlough. And I'm like, you know what? Hey, why not? And I did it. And after we got through the homeschooling piece, I was like, okay, I finally had time to pause. I finally had time to just sit and ask myself, what do I really want? What do I want out of this life? Because we're
Yeah.
always in this hustle mode that we don't know what's going on. We just go on autopilot. I look back and my kids were in kindergarten and preschool. I'm like, what just happened to the last 5 years, 6 years of life. Like, I don't even know where that went. And I still remember sitting in my backyard watching the kids ride their bikes. And I go, oh my gosh, I'm missing this. I am literally missing this. Yeah, the money was great, but I can't buy back this period of
Yeah.
time. No matter
Yeah.
how much money I make, I can't buy this back. So for me, that was the moment where I'm like, you know what? Something's got to change. How can we make this work? And I had always had it on my heart to start up my own business.
Okay.
And at the time, that was a residential home organizing company, which was the perfect business to start during a pandemic because everybody was stuck at home. They wanted to get rid of their things. They were tired of seeing all this clutter
Was that
around
something
them.
you just were good at or you enjoyed or like people asked you for help? Was it
Yeah.
just something you
Oh
just
my gosh,
you're constantly
absolutely.
tidying? Yeah.
Right, exactly. I would go and help friends with it. And it brought me so much joy because it brought me control back, control
Mhm.
of my environment so that I could really focus more on what mattered, which was my
But
family. So
this isn't something that you like had a degree in, right? There was no paper
no.
certification. Okay.
Oh gosh.
So
Oh
was there a
no. I come from a
mindset,
career in healthcare.
right? Was there a mindset shift that had to happen for you to say to yourself, I already am enough. This is okay. People, right? Because so many times people come
Yeah.
to me and say, well, I'm not certified in that. And I'm not sure. And there are other people that know more than me. And let me just say, disclaimer, you absolutely should have certifications in certain things, right? Don't go outside of your scope of practice. What is legal? You should not be providing healthcare information if you're not a healthcare provider. However, there are a lot of things where there's sort of this gray area, and it's oftentimes our lived experience and our unique skill set and sort of our passions and things that we're just interested in that we actually can coach on. But so many people get stuck in the mindset of, well, but who am I to do that? I'm not Marie Kondo. Like, I'm not a professional. I've never been on Oprah talking about this. I don't have a book about this. So was that something that you had to overcome?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I still work through it. I think we all do. Being an entrepreneur is the biggest professional and personal development journey of your life. And until you have that inner belief that you have value to share with the world, you're going to be treading in one place. You're
Yeah.
not going to see the growth. You really have to just detach from all of those expectations and really turn inwards and go, what do I want this life to look like? Because you are capable, you are qualified. Exactly as you said, yes, don't go doing surgery if you're not, a surgeon. But there is a huge gray area. And a lot of times, the one thing holding us back is ourselves.
Mm,
And that was me. I was telling myself this story. I had a lot of guilt that I had to work through because I went to school for a long time and I
yes.
paid a lot of money for this license on the wall.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that wasn't serving me anymore. But what I did is I took my strengths, I took what I loved about that career in healthcare, which was empowering and educating. And now I get to do that every single day. And my heart is so full because I get to help others achieve the success that they desire, to create the outcomes, to help them get out of their own way. And to me, that fills my heart with so much joy. And then I get
Yeah.
to do it on my terms.
Right. This is, I share it all the time. My favorite quote's by Steve Jobs. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back, and you get to trust that they'll appear. And when I see this from a third party and I'm looking at you and you're saying before, like, well, I've had this journey and I've had all these jobs and I did all these things and my business started as home organizing and now it's transitioned to business coaching. It's like, yeah, but looking back, you needed to learn certain skills. You needed to go through certain challenges and overcome different limiting beliefs to get you in a place where you are today. And if I were to guess, in 5 or 10 years, your business is probably going to look very different than it does today. But there's stuff that you're learning right now that you're going to take with you in your toolbox later. So it starts out with home organizing. You're overcoming the limiting belief. Question for you. Had you already
Mhm.
been seeing a lot of other digital marketers and coaches put together programs, thinking to yourself, like, this is possible, I can bring this thing online? Were you a scroller? Were you already seeing other people do it? Or were you physically going into homes to local places in Ohio and then it sort of transitioned online?
So at the time, I was physically going into clients' homes,
Wow.
which was awesome. I loved it. But what I didn't love was the travel. There was so much travel and then navigating sitters and everything else. So that was a challenge.
Yeah.
And but looking back, exactly like you said, if I wouldn't have had that first business that grew very, very quickly, I wouldn't have ever felt this little tug in my heart to start my own community because I would go to different events. I would go to these networking things online for my local community because I was a local service provider. So I needed to network locally. And I was told over and over and over, you know what? You have to choose. You can either be like an awesome mom or you can be a successful business owner. You can't have both. And I'm just going, I don't know. I feel like that's a story that you're trying to like tell me how to think, and I don't believe it. And full disclosure, I wasn't on social media until I started that first business. I
Yeah.
was just kind of content going through it like, hey, I am who I am. And I don't know, like you do you. If you're doing awesome, that's great. If you want to call me, like, here's my number,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I really didn't have too much of an awareness even what was going on in the online space until I jumped into business and I'm like, there's a lot of potential here. Like
Yeah.
this is kind of cool. So I started my community as a Facebook group on a whim, going, you know what? If I feel this way, I'm sure maybe there's one other person in my community that does.
Yep.
So I just did it, like no expectations, and it grew and it continued to grow. And I'm like, holy
But it didn't
cow,
grow
like
by
this is
magic.
crazy.
It didn't
Oh
grow by
no,
magic. So
no.
how has it grown? Because I think a lot of us start programs, communities, putting out content because we sometimes feel like an outsider. Maybe a
Mhm.
lot of entrepreneurs, I know there's just that sort of character trait that we have of, I don't really fit in. I go against the status quo. You're challenging, you're calling it a story, right? Like, I don't really need to believe that story. That's not the traditional way of thinking for a lot of people. And so I know in my experience and a lot of my friends and clients, we sort of create these outlets without expectation, hoping that maybe one other person who feels this way will feel seen or heard, or maybe I'll make a friend out of this. And then over time, you've grown it into this incredible Moms on a Mission community. You have an incredible podcast. Of course, you have your courses and programs, but it hasn't happened by accident. So, what are some of the things that you would equate to growing this community? Because respectfully, there are a lot of mom Facebook groups, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there really are. And I focused on really being super niche. We started locally. So I wanted to make it all about okay, how can I bring moms in my area together and how can I provide value? So one of the first things we did was we created a directory of
Mhm.
local mom businesses. And we're
Love
like,
it.
okay, the next time you need a product or a service, hey, why don't we link arms with each other and support each other? So we came up with these little directory cards of how to support a business for free and literally like guerrilla marketing, like getting out there and going to markets in my area, going to different events, putting in the effort. Outbound lead gen was huge. Just like, hey, we're here. We're here to help you. Like, how can we serve you? Doing a ton of market research, just getting ideas from these entrepreneurs. And at the time, I had no intent to monetize it, which is crazy.
That's
So it was
funny.
just really seeking to serve, not to sell. Building those genuine relationships, building that community first versus being like, okay, I'm going to sell you a membership. Because I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. We forget about the community piece. And then they started to advocate for me. They would know a friend that, oh my gosh, my friend's starting a business. Hey, did you know there's a group in our area that can help support you through this process? So it naturally and organically continued to grow because I was serving first,
Mm.
because I was building that community and fostering those relationships.
It's so simple, and yet we make it
Mhm.
so complicated.
100%.
It's so
I
simple.
am such an overthinker.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think
yeah.
we all
Once
are.
I just, right. And once I just got really super consistent on what I needed to do every single day, I did it. I did
Like
it
what?
without,
What type of stuff were
what's
you,
that?
what type of things, like what actions were you taking every day to be
Yeah.
consistent?
So, number one, building my network. How can I network with other people? Number one, in my community, but now I try and find a networking event online to go to every single day. I want to build my network because collaboration is one of the easiest and fastest ways to grow our communities. It's like you always say, with getting those eyeballs from other people's audiences on your stuff.
Yeah.
We are doing something similar, sure, but we're doing it in a different way. We're providing a little different perspective. We have different life experiences. So, really, collaboration and networking are key. My next one's just engaging with my current community. How often are we like, oh, I need more followers? I totally need more followers. When's the last time you actually engaged with those that are already in your community? That's the low hanging fruit, as you describe. Like,
Yeah.
those are the people that are already opted into you. They're already interested. So nurture them, get them onto a list that you own and nurture those relationships. Look at the analytics, look at your emails, see who's opening it up, and then go online and engage with them through Instagram. Use the data at hand and work smarter. We don't necessarily need to be finding tons of leads and doing all these cold tactics because it's just an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the things that are at hand. And then my last daily one is I just show up. I just show up and be a human, because I'll tell you what, like, gone are the days for me when I first got online. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be like this perfectly polished person. You know what? I don't resonate with that. Like, I don't want people that are showing up pretending like they have it all together, because none of us do.
No.
None of us have it all together, and we're trying to figure it out. This is uncharted territory for all of us. But we're playing around, we're having fun, we're building those relationships. And that's the coolest part of entrepreneurship. So by just showing up authentically as myself, like crazy hair, top knot, like mom life, that draws in my people, because
Yeah.
I'm not attracted to that perfectly polished person that I feel like I can never live up to her standards. Like, no, I want that person that feels like a friend that I can relate to, that I know is going through things and it's going to give me the tough love that I need.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, I love that you talked, there's the consistency piece, there's the engagement piece, there's the just showing up and being vulnerable and authentic piece. And all of these things, like I said before, are so simple, but I'm such a visual person. And I know I've shared this so many different times, but it's like when we're focused on more followers, more people on our email list, it's like you've invited people to a party at your house and then you ignore them and you're not paying attention
Yes.
to the people that are at your house. And it's like you ask them to come, now engage with them, go talk to them, ask them how they're doing, hang out with them, rather than standing outside, with your back to everybody, texting more people or trying to flag down more people to come in. And that is what so many people are focused on. But, you have this beautiful community and arguably a small following in
Mm-hmm.
relation to people who are not running a business. 1,300 followers is, think about 1,300 people coming to your house. That's a lot of people. But in comparison to digital marketing and coaches and stuff, it's a smaller following. I too have a smaller following. So you're saying that with 1,300 followers, no certification in your first business model, just grassroots guerrilla marketing, not even thinking that you're going to build anything, it's possible to have a successful business online?
Oh my gosh, absolutely it is. But the beautiful thing is, okay, so for those gaps that you are not necessarily strong in, there's resources available. There are trainings available. And that's one of the things that helped fill some of the gaps for me in my marketing, in my messaging, because I had never built a group program before. So I knew if I wanted to add this key piece, I needed to learn. Because just like if I decided, you know what, I want to become an accountant, I have to go back to college, right?
Right.
I can't just say one day I'm going to be an accountant and start, doing accounting. No, I actually had to go to class, show up, do the work, put in the work to get the results I desire. And I think so often we're stuck in that consumption mode where we're like, okay, well, I'm just going to take all these courses, all these certifications, but then we don't implement. So it's like going to class, but sleeping the whole time and not putting in the work, and then being surprised when you fail the test. But it's like you never actually put the information into practice. You never implemented all that knowledge.
So what would you say to the person listening who has an aversion or a resistance to hustling and to grinding, because what you're saying is that you have to do the work, which, I agree,
Sure.
because you know how I feel about things, right? We can't just Pinterest our way to a dream life or manifest our way. Like, we have to put in action. That's the law of action comes after the law of attraction. And so for the person who's like, yeah, but that's nice, Amy. Yeah, but I'm
Mhm.
busy. I don't want to hustle. I've tried hustling before. I've done the grind before. I'm exhausted. I'm busy. I'm this, I'm that. Is there a way to do it and take action feeling less of the hustle? Is there a way to do it without burning out? Is the answer just it's going to take you more time, or sort of how do you approach it? Because I know with your clients that you work with, you're sort of, it's not your anti-hustle culture, but you're teaching them how not to hustle while still building this beautiful business around their life, not their life around their business. And you're doing it with 2 kids. So I'd love to hear
Mhm.
from you. What does that look like?
Right, exactly. And for anybody on the outside looking in, I want to say I am no different than you. I've got my challenges. Like, who's not busy? I think every single person in this world is busy, but it's about being intentional. It's about being intentional with the time that you have. So,
Sure.
say you only have an hour a day to commit to this. Okay, that's fine. But what are you doing within that hour? How are you actually using your time? Are you
Scrolling.
chasing?
I'm
Right,
scrolling for
exactly.
inspiration.
Right, exactly. And then we end up chasing shiny objects. We end up pivoting before we even know if what we're doing is working because we're burning the boat down every single time over and over and over instead of making one or two little tweaks. Okay, where were the gaps in my messaging? What wasn't working? It's so much less complicated than we're making it out to be. And when you are just so crystal clear of, okay, this is the outcome that I want. And this is what I did in my career, my whole career. We set a goal. Okay, I know where that goal is. Let's reverse engineer it. Let's reverse engineer it into as small of steps as you need to. If that means you only have a half hour, okay,
Yeah.
what are we doing within that half hour?
Mm.
And if you can, really try and focus on just that one task. So if that means, all right, you need to have a friend take your kids on a walk around the block for a half hour, so be it. But you have to start treating your business like a business because you can't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to have $1 million business and it appears in front of you. It takes strategic action.
Yeah.
It's really then too leveraging your numbers, using the data. I can't tell you how many times I work with clients that don't have a business plan in place. And especially as a parent, or if you have a significant other in your life, I think even having a family plan in place is key as well. Because what happens is we get into this martyrdom mode where we think we have to do it all. But here's the key: just because you can do something does not mean you should be doing something. I mean,
Yes.
just look at what you can automate within your life to free up time so that you can put your time into your business. I mean, look at grocery pickup, grocery
Yeah.
delivery, how much time that saves. And sure, maybe there's a delivery fee, but you're saving the 15 minutes to the store, 15 minutes home from the store, the hour at the store. Okay, I just bought you back an hour and a half.
Right.
And now you're not putting extra things in your cart as you're going through the store. Okay, it pretty much pays for itself. So you
100%.
just have to be really creative. When you don't have large pockets of time, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
totally possible.
Yeah.
You just have to be strategic about how you're spending it.
Yeah. I don't know if you would agree. Again, I'm not a mom yet, but I know they always say, like, there's that kind of quote, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. My belief
Yeah,
is that we as humans do better when we have structure, routine, and are a little bit busy. And it's the adage of, like, back in high school, you had a term paper, you had 3 weeks to write it. Who here wrote it 3 weeks early? No one. We all wrote it the night before when you're cramming because you
right.
you have a deadline, right? We don't need more time. We need a deadline. And so when you have tighter deadlines because you have less time, a lot of us get more done because you don't really have a choice. You got to get your head down and just do it. And I love the sort of metaphor that you brought up as a physical therapist, thinking about that. Today happens to be my 8-year anniversary on the day of detaching 2 ligaments in my left ankle. It happens to be the 13, 14, 8, I don't know, 14th year anniversary to the day of detaching 2 ligaments in my right ankle. And both of those required surgery, and both of them landed me in a wheelchair for 4 months with my leg elevated. And the first thing that happened on my first day of PT 8 years ago was, what's the goal? Obviously, the goal is to get you walking again, but are you going to be doing bodybuilding competitions again? How fit, how quick do we need to, do this? And actually, the goal was not only to be walking again, but we were getting married. And so just a couple months after it happened, I wanted to be able to walk down the aisle without crutches and preferably with heels on. And I busted my butt and did everything the PT told me to do to make sure that it could happen. And a week before our wedding was the first time I put little heels on, but it was the first time I put heels on, and I threw the crutches out, and that was it. I had that vision. I had that clarity of where I was going to go, but I also knew it was going to be a rough road to get there. And not every PT appointment was rainbows and unicorns. Most of them were a lot of pain, frustration, and there were tons of times that there were setbacks. And when you bring that up, it's like, that's literally what running a business is. Some launches are harder than others. Sometimes it doesn't go as planned. Sometimes your stuff flops. You spend hours on a piece of content thinking it's going to be the one, and it's like crickets. So I love that you take a similar, you know what it is? It's a scientific approach to business. It's and maybe that's because we both have a science background, but it's that curiosity of what's working and what's not. Oh, this doesn't mean that I suck if it didn't work. It's just those two things don't make a volcano explosion. So when I mix them together, I know in the future it's not going to work. So let me try a different ingredient. It's that simple.
Yeah, it really is. And when you're so clear on that why is what keeps you going through the valleys. Because there are days as an entrepreneur when you're on the top of the world, there are days when you're questioning it all. But if you have that strong why, just like you did, like, no, I will walk down the aisle for my wedding in heels. We're going to do it. When you have such a strong why, your why is bigger than your excuses. Then you hold yourself accountable, and that keeps you going. I think so often we just give up because things get hard. And it's not a matter of if things will get hard, it's a matter of when, because each stage of entrepreneurship brings new challenges, new expectations, and things are constantly changing. I mean, just look at the digital landscape. Things are always changing. New platforms are coming out, this, that, the other. But having that strong why, that's what will pull you through and keep you going.
Yeah. And I think also having a support system, right? Because so many times, especially so many of the women that I coach, it's more so with the women, their spouse might not be on board, their parents might not get it, their friends might not get it, especially our younger entrepreneurs that we work with. A lot of our entrepreneurs that I work with, a lot of the coaches we work with are typically in their 30s, 40s, 50s. But every now and again, we get girls coming in their 20s or guys in their 20s. And a lot of times they're living with friends and they have roommates and they don't get it. Their friends want to go out and party or drink or whatever, sleep late on the weekends. And our clients are like, yeah, but I really want to wake up and I want to work on this email campaign. And so they don't have that type of support that other like-minded people, again, sometimes we feel really alone. And so it's really important to have that support, especially when you're not getting that at home with friends or family, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I totally relate to this because even now, I still get questioned by my parents. Like,
Do you really?
are you sure you're doing okay? And a lot of guilt comes with that. A lot of going, you know what, I need to justify myself. Like I was constantly justifying. But when I surrounded myself with like-minded entrepreneurs, that's really what changed the game because they showed me proof of like what the possibilities are. They stretched me to dream bigger. It wasn't limiting my beliefs. It's like, okay, you know what? The sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do because I get to design this. But I wouldn't have that inner belief if I didn't have others alongside me that understood exactly what I'm going through. And I think that goes back to like a scarcity versus abundance mindset too. So often we think that someone else in our industry is our competition. Honestly, when you start to view them as your allies, you will grow so fast because they get you. They will stretch you. They will support you when your family doesn't. And that's the reality of it. You do not need permission from anyone else to succeed. You need to give yourself permission. You need to give yourself that permission to go for it. Because really, you take a step back. Is there any such thing as failure? No, there's just redirection. I think the only way you fail is if you just lay down and stop doing anything at all.
Right.
It's just redirection. And that's something that I really had a big takeaway from you with was, just viewing it all as an experiment. Like you said, you're seeing if you get a volcano or if nothing happens.
Yeah.
Once you really can detach, it gets easier. Then you have fun. Then you can play.
I know. Yeah, you totally get to play. You've had so many mic drop moments already on this podcast episode, and I'm just seeing more and more I already knew, but I'm like, oh wow, we speak the same language.
I know.
This is great.
I love it.
I love it. I'm like, because I mean, you're a mom, you get it. Sometimes you tell your kids something, or in my case, when I was a teacher, I would tell my students something and you say it like 4,000 times, and then they hear it from someone else and they're like, oh my God, this amazing thing happened, or I heard this. And you're like, that's what I've been saying for 7 years, but they hear it from someone else.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping right now some of the listeners are hearing you say some things that I maybe have said or feel the same way about, because you're right. There's so much power in the community and the mindset piece and the consistency piece. I mean, if you haven't gotten that out of this episode yet, you haven't been listening. So 16 years in outpatient orthopedic PT. Do you miss it?
No,
Not at all.
not at all. Not at all. It just, healthcare's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It really has. And now I'm able to do what I loved about my job without having to worry about somebody else's standards, definition of productivity, all the bureaucracy. I just get to design a life on my terms. And what I love is that I'm teaching others to do the same. I'm showing my kids and giving my kids permission that, guess what? If your career is no longer serving you, it's okay. Bet on yourself. You can change your mind. You can design the life you desire. You don't have to accept society's definition of success. At the end of the day, it comes down to you. And how do you want to live this life? What impact do you want to leave upon this world?
I love it. Do you showcase your kids on your social media? That's always a really big, important question that parents ask. And I don't have an answer because I don't think there's a right answer, but do you share them?
So I'm very strategic about it. I share the back of their heads. I share stories about them. I'll share pictures, things they do. I don't share their faces. That's a personal decision. But I know there's other people that do. And that was really hard for me at first, was because I am marketing to moms. So obviously, like, you would think I would show my kids. Well, to me, like, I have my own reasons, but yeah, it didn't feel quite right. So you get creative. Again, you find a way that works for you. Just because everybody else is doing something one way, why not do it your way? Because that's the cool part about having a business, right? Like, we make the rules. And I think so often we're busy comparing that we forget, like, hey, do it your way. Like, whatever works for you, do that.
And we get so caught up in not just even the comparison, but the thinking that it has to be a certain way. We get so caught in that it becomes analysis paralysis, and then we don't take action at all. And then a whole year has gone by and you haven't actually started the business because you're so worried about the fact that you think you have to show your kid's face or insert whatever it is that you might be thinking or feeling. And so then we don't take action. So I love that you're evidence and proof that doing it your own way is possible and getting creative. And when someone is zigging, maybe you want to zag, and maybe there are things that you do that a lot of other people do, but then there are things that you do that maybe not a lot of other people do. And so it's the permission piece that's so important. It's the permission to do it your way. It's the permission to do what feels good. And in a time where alignment, and I say that in quotes, is like such a buzz term, I always like to remember, or I always like to remind my audience that you can be bored and in alignment. You can have a bad day and be in alignment. You can feel stale. You can feel confused. You can be lacking clarity and still be in alignment. Alignment isn't about rainbows and unicorns all of the time. And so you can make business decisions based on what is aligned. Going back to what you said, what's the why? What's the purpose? What are your core values as a human? What are your core values for your company? And then you get to make all the decisions from there. And there's no right or wrong way. So that, as long as you're staying within the parameters of being a good person, of course, but there's no right or wrong way, really. So at what point, like, you came into my life, you came into my world because you were super clear on creating a group coaching program or a digital course. Was that something that you always knew you wanted to create? Was it something that your audience was asking for? Was it the thing that you saw to be, maybe the easiest or the most successful? Had you already tried other things like lower ticket or memberships? Or just walk me through the process of how that sort of offer became what you wanted to focus on in the business. Because so many people are like, where do I start? What do I sell?
Right. So for me, I started with the membership and then I knew, okay, I want to be able to serve more people. So I can only reach a certain capacity with one-on-one. So let's try a group program. Let's see where that goes. Let's experiment. Yes, there's a lot of people doing group programs, but maybe they're onto something because logically, like my brain goes, okay, that makes sense. How can I create more time? Well, you have to be one to many. So that's when the wheels started turning and then everything just kind of fell into place. And it was like, oh, okay, let's see if this has the potential to work. And so the opportunity presented it. And I was like, okay, does this seem aligned with mission, vision, values, where I'm at? Yeah. This offer was presented to me, this invitation. Like you always say, it's not an offer, it's an invitation. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Hey, let's try it. And I'll tell you what, that I learned so much from that. I am so glad I took advantage of that opportunity.
I am too, because you were able to enroll how many people into your first launch?
Okay, so I want to be very transparent with everyone. My first launch was a silent launch. Silent launch.
You lived to tell the tale.
Oh gosh, I'm still alive. Yes. And if anybody's ever telling you, I've never had a silent launch, like, okay, good for you. Like, again, what meaning are we attaching to it? I am so glad that silent launch happened because it taught me so much. What did I do? I could have sat there and been like, oh my gosh, this program's terrible. I'm never doing a group program again. No, I didn't make it mean anything about me.
You
I
also
took
could
the
have
data.
blamed me and the team in our program.
But I don't know. For me, like I'm a very like self-aware person. Like I
Sure.
take that personal accountability. Like I feel like I don't know. I've always been that way. Like
But that's
it's
why
all
your
on me.
business is where it is today. But you could have, because that has happened, right?
Right,
We don't get
exactly.
the
We
result
love
we
to
want.
blame.
Yeah, so we blame externally, which is fine. You can all blame me. It's fine. I don't care. I know where I stand, right? And I know what our program does. But you took personal responsibility. You went back to the
Yeah.
drawing board. You did your little science experiment. What was the time frame between the dreaded silent launch, meaning 0 people signed up? So if you're listening and you're like, what does that mean? It's when you launch something and no one enrolls. So you have 0 people enroll. How many days, weeks, or months do you give it before you give it a shot again and launch again?
So what I started doing was I took a week off to just really go back in and figure out, okay, where were the gaps? Where were the holes? Was I showing up enough? Was I talking about it enough? How was I warming my audience up? Here I was trying to sell to a cold audience. I was coming out of nowhere trying to be like, hey, I have this awesome program, buy it. Of course nobody's gonna buy, you know? So what I did then is I patched those holes. I really then focused on warming that audience up, providing massive value, building my email list even further. I went back and I reviewed some of those modules. Okay, how can I make my opt-in even juicier? How can I really build that know, like, and trust, those relationships? So that when cart opened, then I had people ready to enroll. So that whole process, I was about 6 weeks. And also I launched at a really bad time. I launched right around Thanksgiving first. So theoretically you would think, oh, Black Friday. But for my buyer, for my avatar,
Yep.
that wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
But I was able to zoom out and it's like, okay, well, yeah, nobody's going to buy. We're going into the holiday season. Moms are crazy busy. Why would they want to be taking a course
Right.
on building a business while they're navigating the holidays with their kids? Okay, that totally makes sense. So then we kind of refreshed our messaging. And we're like, okay, this is the start of a new year. Let's start fresh. Let's build this business foundation. Changed our messaging, changed our marketing, and then had a super successful launch. So again, being able to detach from the outcome and view it as an experiment, it was very successful then. But I feel like so many people quit when something doesn't go right the first time.
So
And
many
it's just
people.
Right. You just have to make those little tweaks. Don't redo the whole thing. You don't need to start over from scratch every single time. Make those little tweaks and see what happens. See if you get better results. And in
Yeah.
my case, I did. And
Yeah.
then, as you say, it becomes rinse and repeat, and you just, again, post lunch, you go back, you debrief yourself. Okay, what went good? What didn't go so good? How did I feel? I love that you always bring that into, that you're very much about like, okay, how was my energy throughout this? Because launching can be a very, very stressful process.
Yep.
So I think that's really important to bring to light that you do incorporate that. It's not just about the business, it's about you as a business owner. Because if you're not okay, if you're not, if you're so burnt out by the end of the launch, how are you going to then have the energy to show up and deliver on the coaching calls, deliver what you're promising to all of those amazing people that already enrolled?
Yeah. It's so true. I love that you gave yourself the space too, because sometimes when we have a silent launch, a lot of people just quit, right? You kind of crawl into a hole and you
Mhm.
quit. A lot of times people will almost exhaust or burn out their central nervous system and they'll fry it. And then they need like months and months and months and months off. But you were able to sort of take that detachment and that neutral stance, go back through the content, go back through the messaging. And like you said, 6 weeks later, you launched again. You had a handful of women join your program. And didn't you actually you've launched it again, right?
So we've only done 2 rounds of it so
Yes.
far. So yeah, we've relaunched it once, but I would loved, at first I was disappointed. I'm like, oh, 10 people, like that doesn't seem like a lot. Okay, that was amazing. And honestly, I'm glad that it was 10 because if it would have gotten too big, I don't think I would have really been able to provide as big of a transformation because we linked arms together and we really helped those women achieve such massive results. And I think once you get into too big of a program, especially starting out, for me, that was perfect.
Yeah.
That was absolutely perfect. So intentionally, I capped it at 10 the next round just because I'm like, you know what? I love this. And
Yeah.
that's okay because I get to make the rules. Again, it all goes back to doing what feels good for you. In the future, sure, maybe I'll open it up to more. Maybe I'll bring in guest coaches. But again, I get to choose what feels good at the time and play
Yeah.
around.
It's just so wild to see a silent launch. The first one is technically silent. The second one, you end up capping it at 10, which is an incredible number that most people would kill for, especially when you're doing high ticket, right? High ticket, high touch point. Then you launch a third time, you sell it out. If you're capping it at 10, you sell out. And so for the person listening, if you knew that your third launch was going to be sold out, if you knew that your second, your fourth, your fifth launch was going to be $40,000, if you knew that your third launch was going to get you to hit that $100,000 mark cumulatively, then how fast would you move through that first one, that hard one, that silent one, right? And it's like we remind our clients of that all the time, but you're living, breathing proof of that. And you're well on your way now. We're coming up to almost a year ago at this point that you had joined the beta version of self-study. How has your business changed? Where are you at sort of financially with your goals? You don't have to share numbers with us, but sort of where are you at with that? What does the business look like today versus just about a year ago when you said yes to that opportunity?
Yeah. So, I mean, within the past year, last December, I was able to completely retire from my 9 to 5 job. I've
Incredible.
gotten to the point where my husband's down to 20 hours a week in his career. So, I mean, it's just continued to grow, but it's just taking action. It's just being intentional of how I'm spending my time and being so clear on my why. I am here to be proof that I don't have all the fancy degrees. I don't have a business degree. But what I do have is that clear why, that driving force. And because I'm being consistent, because I've gotten out of my own way and given myself permission, now I'm living that life that I've always dreamed of. And I have the best job in the world because I get to teach others how to do the same thing. And that to me is just like, you can't put a price on that. It
Yeah.
is so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling when you finally find your purpose.
Yeah.
But you have to go through a lot of messes along the way. I mean, there were multiple times it'd be easy just to be like, you know what? I give up. It was really hard to walk away from that first business that was so lucrative. But I knew in order to really devote all of my time and all of my energy. I had to be all in on one thing at a time. And so for me, it was making the choice not to stay stuck in analysis paralysis. Like, okay, it's making money, but my heart's leading me here. What do I really want? Really being clear on what is it? What is it that I want this life to look like? And then
Yeah.
designing it.
Yeah. Kiss a lot of frogs before you find the prince, right? I love it because
Yeah.
it's the action that we always talk about. The action breeds the clarity, the action breeds the confidence, which is just like the piece that people don't get. They think it's just going to fall, like you said, into their lap. So I'm curious because I haven't talked to anybody about this yet. Going through, and of course, you don't know any different because you never took the traditional route of Empower, but going through the self-study version, what do you think some of the biggest like driving force pros would be? Who's it for, a self-study version, when maybe it's the busy parent? Like, how did that just fit into your life? Because if I remember correctly, it's self-study. You have access to everything. I think you binge the content very quickly, if I remember correctly. I remember you getting through the content really, really fast, which is
I
fine because
did.
you're allowed to do that. So how did it sort of fit into your life? Did you create a schedule of how you're going to go through the content? Did you find an accountability buddy like we sort of encouraged you to do? What was your experience going through something self-study?
Yeah. So all of the above. Accountability partners were huge. Yes, I did have a group that I would check in with. But for me, yes, it was putting a time on the calendar because now I had skin in the game. Now I had invested in myself. So I'm going to hold myself accountable. So I strongly suggest that if you are that like go getter, if you are like that Enneagram 8, like let's get results, you're willing to put in the work. Because here's the thing, nobody's going to do the work for you. It takes time. And because I had already built a business, I was able to move through, especially the beginning modules, a little bit quicker because I already had a solid foundation in place. Like, okay, I've already got the business bank account, I've already got the LLC, I've already got, a lot of those foundational steps were in place. So I was able to move through that quicker. But I really was intentional about putting blocks on my schedule with those other modules and rewatching them as many times as I needed and actually implementing because
Oh,
you have to take this. Yes.
can I just stop you right there?
Yes.
Rewatching as many times as I needed so that I could take the action to implement. What a beautiful permission slip right there to rewatch. I know it's a crazy idea, everyone listening, but to rewatch something, like if you don't get it or you want to go through it again or you want a deeper understanding, or heck, if you've already watched it and implemented it, but now it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, and you want a refresher. That's why for us, I don't know if you do this, we give lifetime access to all of our stuff. You should
Yeah.
be able to go back through. I want you to rewatch it. There's no shame in rewatching it. So I love that you were taking the time to do that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh my gosh, no problem at all. No, I think it's so important because as your business evolves, things are going to hit you a little bit different. So I think it's important to constantly be reviewing, looking back, identifying those gaps within your current business of, okay, let's see what she had to say. Oh yeah, that hits me a little differently now because I'm now doing this versus that. So we're always trying to improve. We're always trying to improve our systems, our processes, our workflows, all of the things. But for me, it was just being intentional, being so consistent and sticking with it. Again, I go back to my college analogy. You can't just expect to get the A on the paper if you don't show up for class. Like you
Yeah.
have to put in the work. There has to be a level of personal accountability. So no matter what type of business you have, whether it's a product, service, MLM, any type of business, you can get results from this program as long as you're willing to show up and put in the effort because you do a beautiful job of laying it out from start to launch, even post launch. Okay, let's debrief. And I think that's where a lot of courses, okay, you launch, but then what? Like
Right.
what happens next?
Yeah.
But I think that debrief module, especially, is so key to identifying and reviewing and then making each subsequent launch even better than the last one. And I know that's something you guys are constantly doing as well. Is
Always.
after each launch, okay, let's go back. How did
Yeah.
we feel? How did everything look? And really learning that was such a valuable asset. And two, I love all the support that you provided within the free Facebook group. there are so many fellow entrepreneurs in there that if you were struggling, there was someone that could help you. Hey, have you tried this resource? Hey, I've been doing that. You can use it as a place to come for support. So even though you're doing self-study, there's other people that are self-studying alongside of you. So use your resources, link arms with them. There have been some beautiful collaborations that have formed out of that group.
Yeah. If you remember, because I'm trying to figure out the dates in my head, from the moment that you said yes to the opportunity to when you filled your second launch of 10 people, not the second launch, but the actual second of 3, how many months or weeks was that from the moment you joined self-study to then actually making the money of the 10 women joining, give or take?
I would think that that would be about 16 weeks.
Okay.
If I had to give a rough estimate, because I really tried to stay with.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly
Isn't
what that's what we lay out is 16 weeks of following along,
Right.
which really 12, but 16 with support. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's like a recipe. You're giving us the ingredients. It's our job to combine them, to put them in the oven, to let them cook, and to create these beautiful cookies at the end,
I love it.
You never thought you were going to hear that analogy for Empower, did you?
I mean, you've got like pink
Bacon
glitter behind you. If there was going to come from anyone, it was going to be from you. I love it. You're adorable. I have a couple rapid fire questions I want to do.
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day. I don't know how we're coming up on an hour, but we are. Before we get into any of those fun rapid fires, where can people find you? Pimp yourself out. Do you have anything cool for us? Like, how can people work with you? Who do you help specifically? Give us everything.
So I am super active over on Instagram at Amy Traugh. And my other favorite place to hang out is my podcast, the Motivated Mompreneur Podcast. It has resources for literally every business topic. If you go to my website, you can search. So say you need a resource on email marketing, boom, it'll pop up with all the episodes on email marketing, launching, strategy, all things mom life and business, because you can have both. You do not have to choose. And we are here to change the narrative. So my website, themomsonamission.com, has the links for absolutely everything. But my perfect fit is I love working with service providers because I have built a service-based business. Product-based businesses just aren't my jam. I know my zone of genius and I stay within it. So I love helping women gain the consistent income in their businesses without sacrificing their 2 most valuable assets, their time and energy. So we really work through clarity, consistency, and the mindset around it to develop a business around your life.
You are such a natural. You are.
Well, thank you.
Look at you go. I love this. I heard from a little bird somewhere that I think you have a really epic free guide all about marketing your business without spending a dime. Is that true?
Yes, I do. I have an organic marketing guide. We'll link it in the show notes, but it can also be found on the website as well. But yes, this goes into all these just easy and free ways to get your business out there. These are things that I used to build my first business and then my subsequent second business without spending hours on end on social media. There are other ways. We just have to get creative. So I encourage you, download the guide. There's all sorts of juicy resources in there.
I love it. You are the best. All right. So we'll drop all that stuff in the show notes for everybody. You ready for some rapid fire?
I sure am.
Okay. We're going right in.
Okay, let's do it.
Whoever they are, they say new levels, new devils, which means that with every new level, usually there's a new challenge or struggle. Is there anything, I hope you pick something, that you might be currently challenged by or feeling struggling with, or just sort of is there something sticky right now that you're working through? Life or business?
Sticky. I would say this year was sponsorships. The economy's really changed. I'm hosting an in-person event here in Northeast Ohio in October.
Tell us about it.
Sponsorships. Yes. So it's called Confidence Sells. It's an event to empower, elevate, and educate female entrepreneurs. So it's just a day of networking, collaborations. We have breakout sessions. We have headshots. We have all of the things, all things confidence, because if you don't have that inner belief in you, how are you going to show up? How are you going to be seen? How are you going to be able to share your value with the world that needs what you have to offer? So we do this event every October and super excited for it.
And
so I completely forget your
well?
question. Yes, on the website. The website is the hub for everything.
And the dates were what?
October 12th.
October 12th. Okay. We'll make sure that
it's a one-day event.
Perfect. I love it. And that's in Ohio. So the question
Yes.
was, what is your devil right now? What are you struggling with?
Yeah. So it was sponsorships this
Yeah.
year. Last
Yeah.
year we documented everything. Economy's different though.
Yep.
It's just a different climate, different landscape. So for me, what really has helped me as a business owner, like at first I was getting really hung up with it. And now I was like, okay, how can I make this work? How can I make this work? And once you do that, then your mind starts seeing opportunities instead of obstacles. So we got creative. We're trying some different things. We're still playing around with it, but yeah, it's working out and we're going to be
Cool.
just fine.
I love it. I love it so much. Do you have to be a mom to go?
Nope.
Perfect.
Nope. We aim for female entrepreneurs.
Okay. What is one of your guilty pleasures?
Wine. I love a
Mm.
glass of red wine at the end of the night. Oh, it just, yeah, not every night, but to me, just a good glass of like Malbec or Pinot Noir. Oh,
Yeah.
it just warms my soul. Mama's
What
guilty pleasure.
is, yeah, no, it's good. What's one of your favorite movies?
My favorite movie is Home Alone.
Really? Like the OG
Yes.
version?
The OG version. I am a like late 80s, early 90s kid. And to me, like Home Alone just takes me back.
That's amazing. I love it. What's a habit that you've kept that changed your life the most?
I would say just determination, just waking up and being determined, being so determined that, you know what, somebody said I couldn't do something, so I'm gonna do the darn thing. So
Yeah.
it's really a habit that I've developed over the years because there have been many times when it's like, okay, I just wanna quit. No, I'm
Yeah.
determined. I'm gonna make
Yeah.
this happen.
You're such an incredible speaker and you're such a natural at just speaking and thinking on your feet. And I love that so much about you and your podcast. If you were to give a TED talk on nothing that you're known for, what would the topic be?
That's a tough one. I would say, gosh, just that inner belief. I mean, I guess I'm not known for that, but to me, that's so, so important is giving ourselves permission that we don't need that permission slip from anyone else. And external validation was something that I spent a lot of my life seeking was
Yeah.
external validation. But now that I realize that it's just me that needs to give myself permission. That's what my TED Talk would be on.
Yeah. That one resonates really hard for me personally. Last two questions are $50,000 questions. So if I were to cut you a check for $50,000 that you had to use in or on your business tomorrow, you could cut it up and split it or use it in one lump sum. How would you use it? How would you allocate it?
I would invest in a super high level mastermind or a retreat.
Amazing. That's exciting. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then our final question we always end with, I believe we both know that your business is a reflection of you and it will only grow to the extent that you do. And we're always growing and changing and evolving. What is your next personal or business evolution?
So for me, it's retiring my husband. So when we
Yes.
can get to that point, yeah, it's on the radar. But again, it's just consistency. It's just showing up, it's doing the work, it's staying committed to the vision and having fun along the way. Like
Yes.
this life is so short and we're constantly living in this future thinking mode. And the reality is nothing's guaranteed. So we need to start embracing this journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just living for today. So if you are not happy in your current circumstances, change isn't easy, but you do have a choice. Make the choice to make a change, and your life will never look the same.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The one, the only Amy Traugh. It is spelled AMYTRAUGH. So if you are looking for her on the gram, we'll link everything in the show notes. Amy, I adore you. I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
And
you. Seriously, you have changed my life. I appreciate you.
well, you've changed mine as well. I hope you know that. So, as always, my friends, the best way to give back to Amy is to take a screenshot of this episode or a screen recording of this episode, share it out on social media, let us know what your biggest takeaways were. There were so many mic drop moments. In fact, good luck, Victor. He's our editor. Good luck editing this and finding a soundbite because there are so many to choose from. But if you share that out on social media, tag Amy, AMYTRAUGH, tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. We love to see what you are loving so we can bring you more of that. And as always, friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.